and then set the bail. And this time I just kind of cranked it a little bit and I felt it tight.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes just twang it, just bump it a little bit with the end of the rod. And if you do that, you'll sometimes alert that flounder and they'll swim and you'll know you have one. In this case, I didn't do that. I just tightened it. As soon as I tightened it, he started running.
Welcome to the Eternal Fishing Podcast. My name is Kyle. I am a pastor and I'm also passionate about fishing. In this episode today, I have the opportunity to interview with my very own dad, who knows so much about flounder fishing. It's incredible. He has been fishing in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina for over 40 years, catching flounder. That's his specialty. That's what he loves to do. And so I was able to ask him some questions and to get some great knowledge from him. Before we jump into that call, let me read for you from Psalm 27, verse 14. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. I also have a great quote here by someone named Patrick McManus. He says this: scholars have long ago known that fishing eventually turns men into philosophers. Unfortunately, it's almost impossible to buy decent tackle on a philosopher's salary. Hey, enjoy this episode. I hope you learn a ton about flounder fishing. Well, hey, Dad, how's it going?
It's going good, Kyle.
Awesome.
How you doing today?
Oh, doing well. I'm super excited to do this call and pick your brain, especially about flounder fishing. Gosh, how many years have you been flounder fishing?
Well, freshwater fish, first of all, is with my dad. I did a lot of that. I really didn't start saltwater fishing till I was probably 22 years old, 23 in that range. So,
okay.
I've been doing about, 44 years.
Oh my goodness. Well,
yeah.
And, when I think about growing up and all of the fun we've had on the water, it's just such a blessing to remember all of those times, out on Winyah Bay camping and going out on the river and fishing in the lakes and stuff. So it's just, wow, what a great memory, to have all of those times together on the water. So
yeah, I've enjoyed, hanging out with you guys and going. It's been the highlight of my life for sure. At times, to get out into nature and to enjoy it, mostly to have your sons there. It's good, but
yeah.
No, I like the saltwater fishing. I prefer it over freshwater fishing. I guess it's because I prefer the taste of saltwater fish to freshwater fish. Yeah.
And, for whatever reason, I just feel like I have more luck on saltwater than I do freshwater in terms of actually catching fish. And that's mostly because of, skill. It's not really related to anything, but I feel like you can catch a huge variety of species and different things in saltwater. Maybe that freshwater is a little bit more limited with that. So.
Yeah. That's true. You have a more variety of fish, I think, in the salt as far as in the inlets. I like to fish the inlets, and there's a lot of fish that you can eat in the inlets that are delicious. So, I prefer that too. And living down here in Garden City, it makes it easy to get out there and have fun. Sure does.
Yeah, you got a great setup where you can just shoot out the front door and jump in the boat and head on out. So that's awesome. Well,
yeah.
Well, I'm particularly excited about the call because when I was thinking about people that are skilled in different areas of fishing and passionate about particular fish to go after, flounder just comes to mind for you when I think of what is your fish? What is the thing that you love to catch? I know we did a trip to Wilmington a few years ago, and we got the family on the boat and we're just reeling in fish, and we had the big stingrays going, and you're on the front and you're come on guys, let's focus on the flounder,
Well, we got to get the flounder. Yeah. Flounder is my favorite. I mean, it's no doubt about it. If I had to catch and clean and cook a fish, it's the flounder because it's just the taste of it. Now, your mother, she prefers flounder over anything.
Right, right.
And I do too. And so that's the one I focus on the most. I think it is one of the most difficult fishes to it's a more difficult fish to catch for me. In other words, the learning curve for me to learn about the flounder and how to catch the flounder has been much more so than with other species, even the redfish or the trout.
Yeah.
The flounder is such a stealthy fish. And if you could learn the habits of the flounder and if you study the flounder and you learn how they eat, how they attack their prey, then you'll start to catch flounder.
Well, with that being said, enlighten us on what you have learned to be the habits and the methods and the stealth mode of a flounder. Like,
Okay.
walk us through it
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
Oh, I don't mind. I think there's three major things that affect catching a flounder. Number one, the tide. You have to understand the tide, the temperature of the water, and the bait that they're going after. The tide is an amazing thing. If you think about the tides, God created the moon, and the moon affects the tides every day. We have a two tides a day here, in and out twice. And the movement of the water and the tides affects the feeding habits of the flounder. I've noticed that when the water's moving, especially on an outgoing tide, that if you're in the spots where the water's moving around some edges or points of over rocks, the flounder will be there. Now, flounder are in all depths of water. They can be in shallow and even down in deep water. And that's the first thing is the tides. If you can understand those, the second thing is the temperature of the water. Like in the early spring, the water's a little cooler. You're coming out of winter, the water's cool, and the flounders start to move in from the ocean, where they hang out in the ocean until the water warms up because they're following the bait, and the bait seems to grow in amount in right along with the temperature of the water. And so the temperature of the water in the spring and the fall, the cooling water tends to entice the appetites of the flounder. And in the midsummer, the water temperature is higher. And there's a couple things about that. You have to understand a higher temperature water doesn't hold as much oxygen as a cooler temperature water. And flounder, they need oxygen just like we do. So what happens in the summer is the flounder tend to go where the water's a little cooler. They might even move out of the inlet into cooler water and move back into the inlet when the water is cooler in the fall or in the spring. So if you understand the movement of the water, first of all, the tide, second is the temperature of the water, which also, I'm excited right now this time of year. We had a great day yesterday.
Yeah,
Fishing.
I'm
I'd
excited
like
to hear
to tell you
that.
about that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
we
yep. Go ahead.
okay, yeah, yesterday was quite a day. We had a high tide about 11 o'clock right here in Murrells Inlet. And my buddy and I, we put the boat in about 1:30, and we didn't have any bait. We had to go catch our bait, and I was hoping. My favorite bait is, of course, a finger mullet. I also like to use mud minnows.
Okay.
But if you can get a finger mullet, if you can catch a finger mullet anywhere from 2.5 to 4 inches long, even 5. 6 sometimes also. But if you can catch, like yesterday, we went out and we went along the beach and through the net, and we caught about 4 dozen finger mullet and put them in the live well. And I was real happy to get them because up until yesterday, I've had a hard time finding finger mullet this year. They tend to, they'll school and they'll come along the edges. And if you just go easy with your boat along the edge, one person driving the boat, one person casting the net, you'll see the schools come by. And then if you cast them on them and then put them in a bucket and then dump them into your live well, you'll have finger mullet, which is to me the favorite bait. Of course, I use artificial too sometimes when I can't get mullet, but The bait's it. So we got some finger mullet out along the beach line there, and we went straight out to the South Jetty,
Okay.
and we started fishing. I wanted to try different depths of water. Like I talked earlier, the depth of the water, really when they're feeding, they prefer to be in an area where the mullet are moving through. And the mullet usually hang along the banks, and the school's a little finger mullet. And so, since we had finger mullet in the boat, we anchored the boat off of the South Jetty, about 20, 30 yards off of the jetty to where you can cast toward the jetty.
Were you on
And
the north side or the south side of that jetty?
we were on the inside of the South Jetty.
Okay.
Right. Inside of the South Jetty. And
Got
so
it.
we tried different depths there. And so we went out there, dropped the anchor. I think it was about 20 foot of water. And I wanted to try to get in the deep water first because with such good bait that we had, I wanted to see if there was some big ones because
Yeah.
in that deep rocky water, you can sometimes pick up some big flounder. And when I say big, the limit here in South Carolina, they have to be 16 inches long, and which is increase. And I'm happy to see the increase in the size because I've noted over the last 10 years that the flounder are more abundant due to the size increase,
Yeah.
which allows, the flounder to spawn. Flounder typically spawn when they're 2 to 3 years old, and they generally hit the 16-inch length in about two to 2.5 years old, the fish are. So
Okay.
anyhow, we got out there and we put the anchor down, and I was fishing. I just started with one rod using a Carolina rig. And a Carolina rig is my favorite, which is just, your fishing line goes down to a swivel, and above the swivel, I use like a half ounce or a 3/4 ounce sinker.
Okay.
And then off the swivel, I'll run a line off of that, a line that goes straight to the hook, which is your leader. And I like to use a 2/0 circle hook.
Okay.
I tend to use that. It works well with the flounder, and so we hooked some baits up, my buddy and I, and threw it out there. And I think it was my second cast. I threw it out there towards the rocks, and it's kind of rocky on the bottom, so you'll get hung. And I have a practice with flounder. Now, flounder are stealth fish. They lay on the bottom. They're not like a trout or a redfish that'll just come in and nail the bait. They lay there. And if the water's moving, they're alert and they're looking for the bait overhead. So what I do, I like to cast the rod, give it plenty of line, let it submerge to the bottom with the mullet on it. And then I'll let it sit. And that what'll happen if you have a leader on there, say 18 to 24 inches long, that lead, if it's big enough, will pull that mullet to the bottom. Now, if you're using a 6-inch mullet, you're going to go with a larger sinker because that mullet will drag that sinker around.
Yeah.
And move it around, which is not a bad thing, but you want the mullet down near the bottom where the flounder are laying because they're laying. They're not just actively swimming around looking for food, but so lay it there, and keep your line snug. So if something hits it, you'll feel it. But if you don't get a bite, just raise with a line tight, raise your rod and move that bait like maybe 6 to 8 feet closer to you.
Okay.
Let it sit. Let it sit. I don't actively wind it or drag it in. Trolling, of course, is the most popular method of catching flounder. So when you're trolling, you're actively moving that bait down a stream or up, down a creek I usually troll against the current. So anyhow, I did that about 3 times and I felt a little bump. Now, sometimes flounder hit it hard. Sometimes they just bump it. And when they do that, I don't set the hook. I'll release the bail and let the line off. And on this particular fish, I did that. And I let the line off, and I usually count to like 15. Sometimes I'll just get up and maybe check my other rod if I'm using 2 rods, and then come back to that rod. and then set the bail. And this time I just kind of cranked it a little bit and I felt it tight.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes just twang it, just bump it a little bit with end of the rod. And if you do that, you'll sometimes alert that flounder and they'll swim and you'll know you have one. On this case, I didn't do that. I just tightened it. As soon as I tightened it, he started running. And anyhow, we reeled him in, and my buddy got in the net, and we pulled up a 22.5-inch flounder yesterday.
Woo!
Very nice fish, yeah.
That is a great catch, man.
Yeah, that was like my second cast. So,
Oh man, that's
yeah,
fun.
but
So when you're saying when you throw it out and you let it sit, how long do you let it sit before you pick it up and move it those 6 to 8 feet just to kind of change positions? How long do you let it go before you move it a little bit?
well, I generally, about a minute.
A
A
minute.
minute's
Okay.
long enough. Yeah, if there's a flounder in that area, even if the water's clear, like when the water temperature is coming down right now, we're getting into the 70s, high 70s. So when the water temperature comes down, the water clarifies. And when the water clarifies, then the flounder can see the bait at a distance. And so if there's a flounder near that bait, and I say 6, 7 feet, even 7 feet away, they're going to go over to that bait. So
Mm-hmm.
if I don't get a hit like in a minute, I might adjust it because my
Okay.
bait may be down between the rocks, and but a flounder is a funny fish. Like I said, if you can learn the habits of the flounder, you've done something. A flounder, sometimes if I'm just bringing it in, that flounder will go over and sit by and look at that fish, and then you move the bait, then they'll kind of move with it and look at it. And like yesterday, we caught a total of 5 flounder, maybe 6. 2 were keepers, and the other 3 or 4 were not.
Right.
Now, those fish, the flounder will sometimes follow that bait all the way up to the point to where you have your bait straight down by the boat.
Huh.
And
Really?
that's right. And when they realize that fish is going away from them, they'll hit it, bam,
Huh. Okay.
right then. So never give up when you're reeling your line in trying to catch flounder. Never give up to think that, hey, my bait's just hanging straight down here off the boat. They're not there. Just leave it down, and sometimes you can just let that lead bump the bottom right there because they've followed it all the way to you.
So does that
Yep.
mean before you kind of finish that, reeling it in, do you just let it sit there a little longer under the boat, or do you do anything differently to try to maximize that potential that a flounder maybe has followed it all the way to the boat? Is there anything you do differently to try to secure that?
Well, there's generally about a minute in each position. Okay.
Right,
Now, some
right.
people might think that's too long, but the thing about it is too, like if, for instance, this has happened a lot. I'll have the line straight down and I'll reel it and I'm getting resistance. Now, if your bait's hanging straight down and you have a mullet on it, you're not going to have any resistance. You're just
Okay,
going to reel your
okay.
bait. But if you pull it and that line is tight and it's like it stops, that flounder has the bait in its mouth. Okay, they'll have it in their mouth and you'll feel it. And sometimes you can even drag a flounder that has the bait in its mouth. Like if you're not feeling the usual bumpy bottom
Huh.
and you're getting this smooth, kind of hard drag, you either got a shell or you got a flounder on there.
Okay.
So
And that's
the
different than like
yeah,
seaweed, right? It's a different
yeah.
feel. Yeah.
It is a different field as seaweed because, like if it's straight down and it's not coming up easily, sometimes I'll just let it sit another minute to give that flounder time to
Okay.
chaw on that fish. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it sounds like really when you find a spot, then you're going to be there a little bit a minute in this location, and then you move it a little bit more, a minute in there until you get the fish.
Mhm.
How long do you give a spot? Like generally, say like you pull up to the rocks there at the jetty and you're fishing. How long do you give it before you say, you know what, I'm going to try another spot?
Well, the jetties, like the inlets when the water's moving, is usually a pretty active area. So if you say I anchored in 20 foot of water, and if we don't catch a fish like in the first 15 minutes there, 20 minutes there, then we'll pull the anchor
Okay.
and maybe move into a little shallower water and try casting there. Because if you're not on them, then you're not where they are, because the flounder are going to adjust their positions based on where the bait is and where the current is, and where, if there's drop offs, like if you're going along with your depth finder and you notice that the bottom, say, goes from 6 to 8 feet, in a short distance, then the flounder will love to lay on the edge of that slope, because the bait will wash over that slope and then they'll nail it. They're ambushing. They're an ambushing fish. They will stay they'll move with the bait, and they like areas where the water's either moving up and down or around obstacles.
Okay.
So we'll move the boat. Like yesterday, we moved the boat probably 5 different positions. We fished. We had our bait in the water at about 2:30, and we pulled up anchor at 5 o'clock, and we caught, like I said, 5 or 6 flounder. I can't remember, and then we also caught a large redfish on the same rig.
The same rig.
And
yep.
Yeah, he was 26 inches or 27 inches long, so we had to let him go. He wasn't in the slot. And we also caught some ribbon fish, and they're just
yeah,
they're a predatory fish that'll just drive you crazy. So
I think they're an invasive species, right? I mean, they're not. Have you seen ribbon fish in the inlet, in the Murrells Inlet, the many decades you've been fishing out there, or is that relatively a new thing?
Well, they seem to be more plentiful a little bit right now, but a lot of people do eat them, or they're great bait. A lot of people use them for bait, but no, I don't eat them, but some people do.
Okay.
But no, I think they're kind of a pest to me, because as you pull your mullet up off the bottom, they'll just tack it and hold on to it.
Right.
Just hold on to it like if you're playing with your dog and he's got that bone, he doesn't want to let go. But they're just, they'll eat up your bait. That's for sure.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned you also caught a redfish. Do you ever see that maybe a trend where the redfish and the sea trout are in the same places as the flounder? Or do you ever see a scenario where maybe flounder like particular areas that might be a little different than those other predatory fish?
Well, I do happen upon redfish and trout when I'm flounder fishing, but generally a trout or a redfish is going to want a moving bait, not necessarily one sitting on the bottom, but they'll go down and get it if the water's clear and they see that opportunity. Like this one yesterday, it hit hard and it took a while to get him in. I think I sent you a picture of it.
Yeah.
Nice fish, but they're if you want a redfish, then you want to cast a moving lure or moving bait around rocks, jetties, and oysters. A tip that a good buddy of mine, he's a great fisherman, told me once, where if you go out at low tide in the winter or in the fall and it's early spring, and you see where people are getting oysters, if you go back into those areas when the tide moves in, because the oysters have been crushed and crunched and that protein's in the water still, the redfish and the trout will both move into those areas. But
wow, what a great tip!
If I'm fishing for redfish or trout, sometimes I'll just use like a 1/4 ounce sinker with a saltwater assassin lure. I prefer I prefer electric chicken, or either the woodpecker is my favorite 2 colors on that. But
in that Bass Assassin brand.
Yeah, Bass Assassin. And the gulp baits are great for flounder. If you get a gulp bait that has the scent on it, it's a really good flounder bait.
Okay. Awesome. Now, so it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like your preferred method is the Carolina rig, fishing the bottom, moving that bait occasionally as needed to keep the area covered. That's right? That's kind of that's your go-to approach.
I like it that way. That's my favorite way to fish. But when you get into the midsummer, when the fish are kind of like in deeper, cooler water, when it's hot out, then I'll troll.
Okay.
I'll troll. Yeah. And when you're trolling, I like to troll the main channels and into that deeper, cooler water, and usually use mud minnows or mullet. You can catch mullet in the middle of summer too, because they're usually on the surface getting oxygen. But yeah, and just when you're troll against the current And when you think you're going slow enough, then you need to slow down even more.
Right.
Yeah,
The key is
because
slow, slow.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just like to catch flounder, but I think the most exciting way for me is to park and cast.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Are there any other ways to catch flounder outside of the Carolina rig and the trolling method? Are there any other potential ways?
Well, when I was younger and my balance was better, I like to flounder gig, and you've
Oh,
done
yeah.
that with me
Oh,
quite a
yeah.
bit too. But I think that's a different topic altogether. But
Well, I remember
yeah,
us flounder gigging there in Murrells Inlet around Goat Island, and the bars are right there cranking out music. And I don't know what hour in the morning it was, maybe like
yeah.
maybe 1 a.m. or something. We're pulling around, and they start singing the classic song "Brown Eyed Girl," and we're in the boat up on front, dancing and singing "Brown Eyed Flounder," "Brown Eyed
Brown eyed flounder. Yeah, I know.
Flounder."
You
Yeah.
you gotta. It's entertaining to do that, but it's also entertaining when at Murrells Inlet listening to all that good music they got going on down there. But
Right.
flounder is a great fish to catch, and however you do it. But maybe one day I'll get my balance back and get back on the
Oh, man.
boat go get it, because I have done the Nest T plunge off of the front of a boat many times
Right.
when I was flounder gigging, and but
Well,
thank goodness the water's warmer then.
yeah. I think that one of the things that makes flounder gigging at night so much fun, which is basically, if anyone doesn't know, it's you have lights on the front of the boat that shine down in the water, illuminates the bottom of the inlet where you can see all the creatures and crabs and flounder sitting there, and they're camouflaged in. So part of the fun about flounder gigging is just spotting them and trying to see them because they're camouflaged so well. And then sometimes they're just
Oh,
plain as day, just sitting right there waiting for you to get them.
yeah.
But what's so much fun too is not just gigging flounder, but seeing all of the marine life that's down there, and the crabs and the sea snakes and all of the different things. So it's just an adventure going out there at night to see, what are we going to find? What's going to be out there?
Oh yeah, I got a lot of stories about that, but I'll go into that one day if you want to talk about gigging, because I'm
Yeah, we
telling you,
should do that.
I could I could go on for hours about that now, but
Now,
that's a different world altogether.
yeah, and I've seen pictures where you came back and just had tons of flounder laid out, in your earlier days, especially. I remember the old movie we would watch about how to gig flounder, produced by Sea
Yeah,
Striker. And what's
yeah,
so funny is
yeah.
they say, "And you'll see plenty more throughout the course of the night." And it's like, that's not necessarily guaranteed now. Like, there's no guarantee that you're gonna see plenty more. But, well, thanks.
They're kind of flounder fishing is kind of like, I mean, flounder gigging is kind of like flounder fishing. You'll learn where they are, and you'll learn that the habits of the flounder. And I think flounder gigging has made me a better flounder fisherman,
Oh,
because
interesting.
when you're gigging flounder, you start to realize, hey, this flounder is here, or these flounder are here. And why are they here? And you think
Yeah.
about that, and you look at the undulations of the structure of the bottom, and you start to realize that when you're fishing, hey, because the bottom shows me this terrain, then the flounder are here. But flounder are just completely different to catch than any other fish I've ever caught. And I'll never forget that time when you and I and your brother, we were down there at camping on the coast there, and you threw artificial a chartreuse a jig with I think it was a yellow or a white tail, and you happened on a flounder, and you had that line, that rod was stretched to the max, that thing was stretched to the max, and I had the net right, and I'm still kicking myself for this, but when you brought that flounder in, and you fought him a long time before you got him in, that flounder, we finally got his half of his body and was hanging in the net, and it was a large net, and the tail was hanging off the back, and I looked that flounder in the face, and that flounder's chin, if you on the older flounder, flounders don't live at like 12 years at the max, but this had to be a big. it was on his chin was like little gross there. Looks like hair. I call it the beard. If you ever see a big, but that flounder, I'll never forget. He bent the hook on that jig and he went back
Yep.
to where he belonged. And
The one that got
forget
away.
that was the one that got away for sure, buddy.
Oh
That was,
man.
and I'd have loved to have had him in the fry pan.
Yeah, no
But
doubt. Well, speaking of that, you mentioned you like to catch fish that taste good, right? And so, what is your
yeah.
favorite way to cook flounder?
Well, your mother has a fantastic recipe for broiling them, and you just take the fillets, and she takes butter and garlic, and coats the flounder fillets in a glass dish like a Pyrex, and then bakes them until they're cooked. But then she takes another blend of mayonnaise with Parmesan cheese with lemon juice in it, lots of lemon juice, and a little bit of scallions cut up, and makes a paste like a coating. And
Oh,
then after, like I said, after those flounder are cooked already, just in the garlic butter, she'll paste that over the top of the fish, then real thin, and then put it in on broil. And then when they broil it, and that mustard Parmesan cheese gets a baked kind of a brown glow. It'll actually toast like toast, and then take it out. That is absolutely delicious.
oh man.
And just eat it, and then it's so good that you can take the sauce from that and put it over toast like garlic toast, and it's delicious. But
Oh, yeah.
that's a great way. And then, of course, the fish fry, the
Oh yeah.
proverbial fish fry that you and I have experienced a lot. And I love to do that because a flounder, if you clean it right, it'll stay fresh, and then you can freeze it and eat it later. And then a flounder is just keeps its taste if you keep it cold the whole time. But then you can take that fried flounder and eat it the next day on a sandwich, or even for breakfast. I'll take a piece of fried flounder. Yeah.
So good.
It is delicious. I tell you, God's given us a great variety of fish to eat, and I think He's given your mother and I the flounder.
That's your
But it's a
preferred for
good one.
sure. Oh,
Yes, sir.
well, thank you for the tips and tricks. A lot of great info from the tides, the temperature, the bait, the just some techniques on how to fish the Carolina rig and trolling, and yeah, and got to reminisce a little bit about flounder gigging as well. Those are a lot of fun in all of those. So, well, thanks. Hey, thank you, Dad, for your time. Thanks for sharing your insights. When are you hitting the water again?
Well, we're getting ready to go right now. We went yesterday,
Yeah.
and we had such good luck, and my buddy's here, so he's got the boat all hooked up. I had to go work on my pin reel a little
Okay.
bit today, and I love pin reel. They're just a great reel. But yeah, we're getting ready to head back out and put the boat in.
Oh man.
The tide's going to be dropping again, so we'll get out there about a mid tide and give it another shot.
Oh, well, tear them up. Let me know how it goes.
I will.
All right. Talk to you later, Dad. Thank
All
you.
right, love you, buddy.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation about flounder fishing in Murrells Inlet. Just definitely a lot of great information there. Some basic techniques, and really some really basic knowledge about the tides, about the temperature of the water and bait, and just some techniques on how you actually can detect a flounder on the end of the rod, things like that. So I hope that was just some great basic knowledge to get you started on flounder fishing. You know, I started off the podcast with that quote about philosophers and fishing, and in philosophy is just not a way to pay for fishing. You know, that's a funny joke sort of thing. I did want to take a moment just to reflect on some basic knowledge, that idea of basic knowledge. The Bible's full of knowledge. There's so many facts. We could get super technical and detailed when we jump into the Bible, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I think that's actually a really good thing. But before you can do that, you have to have basic knowledge, and what Scripture tells us is that God created. And so the very beginning of Scripture introduces us to God, and it introduces us to this problem called sin, and that basically is separation from God. So God, who created all things with order, all things in good standing, and then gave mankind, the first people, Adam and Eve a choice. And they just rebelled against that. They chose their own way, and with that came what we call the fall, or the separation from God. And so that's just kind of a core basic worldview of the Christian faith, that we all have this problem called sin. And God sent his son to die on a cross because death was required, because God had told that to Adam and Eve. He said, the day of you eat of this, or the day that you disobey me in this way, you will surely die. And so the basic idea of the Christian faith is that God had to keep his promise about death. And so he did that by sending his son Jesus to die on the cross in our place. And if we place our hope in him, and if we believe he not only died, but that he rose again, we will have everlasting life. And so that's kind of the core basic understanding of the Christian faith. And just like in fishing, if you want to go fishing, you got to have some basic understanding, right? You got to have a general idea of where you're going and what you're doing and how you're going to do it. And so you got to have a fishing rod, you got to have a line, you got to have a weight, you got to have a bait or lure or something that's going to attract the fish to bite that hook. And so I didn't want to get too deep into the philosophy side of things, but that's just the core basic information about the Christian faith. And I hope that this episode about flounder fishing has given you some core basic information on how to catch flounder. Hey, enjoy yourselves. I hope you get out on the water soon if you haven't yet, and enjoy God's creation. And until next time.